Alrighty, so a big welcome to you once again for downloading the free guide or the resistance map. You can find that below. You can download that, and that's going to walk you through the 24-page guide step by step of how to apply resistance mapping so you can find those hidden root core beliefs, those core distortions and fears that have previously gone unseen, so you can unwind and resolve some of those repeating patterns in your life. And now I created this course, this 5-module mini course, so you can go through and have a little bit more context as to exactly why you may not have found the healing and been able to resolve some of those repeating patterns, those core fears, those loops, distortions, anxieties. You can't stabilize in the I am awareness, your true self, your true presence, and core vibrational frequency. And how we can start peeling back the layers and looking at this in a different way so we can actually complete the map once and for all to healing, so that you can find and discover those hidden layers, and they're no longer going to be going unseen and below the hidden level of conscious awareness. And so in module 1 here, we're going to look at fixing the broken map, because you may have even come here having worked on yourself for years, reading countless books, attending workshops, trying different approaches, yet somehow you find yourself caught in the same patterns, same struggles, and same emotional loops that feel almost impossible to break. And you can't put your finger on why they keep showing up and repeating in your day-to-day life. And I get it, it's so frustrating. And the most frustrating part of it is the fact that you just can't seem to figure it out, the fact that you can't seem to find the root cause. And I know because I've been there, and I kept cycling for months and sometimes even years on end with certain unwanted repeating patterns, unwanted loops and fears and distortions that I thought I had been working on, but they still kept showing up weeks, months, and even years later. So we're going to be looking at why that is, and we're going to be looking at what to do about it. Okay, so look, what we have to realize is that a lot of healing modalities and methods out there, even though they are very effective in their own right, if the distortion and the root of the fear isn't being addressed specifically by that modality, then it's really only going to be peeling back some of the layers, and it's really only, even in worst cases, treating some of the symptoms, meaning the root is going to remain unseen and untouched, and then the symptoms eventually will return. And an analogy I like to use is similar to when we're trying to remove weeds from a garden. If we simply take scissors, garden scissors to it, and cut it, and leave the root intact beneath the soil, then sure, it's going to look clean for a while. It might even look clear. It might even look like it's gone for a while. But eventually, the weed is going to sprout up again from the root, and before long, it's going to be back bigger and even sometimes stronger than before, because the root has never been addressed. It's only been cut at the surface level. Healing applies in a similar way. If we're not getting down to the levels and the layers that are oftentimes far below the surface of conscious awareness, if we're not getting them, if we're not getting to them and we're not getting to the root, then oftentimes they return, and we're left scratching our heads asking why they're returning, why these patterns and unwanted and repeating loops still keep arising in our day-to-day life, still keep arising in our body and our energy field, even though we thought we'd addressed it. And so the whole purpose of this mini course is going to be peeling back layer by layer to really show you what it takes to complete a holistic and full map of healing, so that there's no longer any more guesswork for you, so that you can start diving in, discovering the root of these patterns, fears, and distortions, and that empowers you to resolve them and clear them once and for all. And what do these layers look like? So as we may or may not be aware, we are not the avatar that we're embodying. The physical character and the person that we see in the mirror is like a holographic avatar, a prism of light that we get to experience through at the level of the soul. So the soul comes in to inhabit or permeate the entirety of the physical body, the nervous system, and the immediate energy field that delivers a certain type of experience here in the physical reality. And the beautiful thing about this experience is it seems to have been created in layers or different bodies, and different bodies at different depths of consciousness until we reach soul awareness or I am presence. The I am presence, if you've ever heard of it, is that level of awareness that sits behind everything, that silence that the gurus and the ancient mystics talked about by always referring to terminologies and phrases like be here now, just rest in the I am, rest in the silence. This is what they're all talking about because they're simply providing pointers, for us to point our direction inward back to the core self of who we truly are. And so let's start peeling back the layers here. We've got the physical body and the nervous system, which is the most superficial level of our physical experience because it is the most close to the material and the physical plane. Therefore, it is actually the most holographic. And when we have distortions and fears stored at the physical level and in the nervous system, this can include feelings of bodily sensations. This can include typically your fight or flight, freeze or fawn situations when you're feeling threatened. This can include tension, anxiety, trauma stored in tissues and even in the organs. And then we move up a level to the emotional body. This is where feelings, reactions, emotional wounds, and protective mechanisms come into play. And this is where if the mind feels triggered, if the mind feels like it's going into situations that it feels threatened in, emotions will be generated within the energy field and within the emotional body and then the physical body to signal to you that you're in a potentially threatening situation. And then it could be time to flee, fight, again, freeze or fawn in this certain situation and environment, because there's a record housed within the subconscious mind that deems this situation as being a threat. And now we know from being in certain situations when we're feeling threatened, let's say social situations, for example. So if any of you have dealt with social anxiety before, you know that it can feel intimidating and very anxiety provoking when we move into social situations, even if it's just a small gathering, where for whatever reasons beyond our logical mind, the body starts triggering and activating into fight or flight. This can look like nervousness, this can look like sweating, this can look like tension, anxiety. And our logical mind knows that we're not in any threat, we're not in any danger at all. Because as I said, this can just be a small gathering, even amongst friends. There is absolutely no threat to us whatsoever. However, there are records playing within deeper layers of mind and deeper layers of body that suggest that we are in a threatening situation, and even more than that, suggesting that our very survival might be at risk. So in order to perpetuate your survival, this record triggers your body into reactionary mode. It triggers your emotional body into a chain reaction to attempt to rectify the potential threat through this nervousness, anxiety, fight or flight, freeze or fawn, to rectify the survival threat. And as I said, our logical mind knows that this is a completely benign and totally harmless situation. So it's kind of hard for us because we're trying to figure out why our body is reacting in this certain way. And as I said, this is why, because there are records being kept somewhere within your bodies, within your energy field, that suggest you're in real danger. And then we get to the mental body. And this is where the beliefs and stories are housed that suggest we could be in a threatening situation. So this is where it looks like when we go back to our past childhood trauma, for example. Let's say we're following along with the social anxiety situation. Let's say we're 4 years old and we go back to the idea of being in a social situation where we're ridiculed for speaking out, and our perception of that ridicule and our feeling of that ridicule at that time stores the belief that it is unsafe for us to interact and speak out in a social setting. This then stores at the mental layer of mind as a belief and perception of reality, which then gets filtered through our feelings, emotions, and our physical nervous system even, and starts to get stored even in our tissues and organs, the records that we are under threat in social situations and we're under threat of ridicule. And depending on how traumatic that situation was and the intensity of the emotion and the energy that gets imprinted along with that mental story and belief in the mental body, that is going to determine how visceral the body reacts in social situations in the future. So if your 4-year-old self interpreted that in a very, very threatening and traumatic way, the chances are that your physical body and nervous system and emotional body and mental body are going to store that record as very, very important to escape from or fight in or just react to, because it feels like that is a very, very real threat to your survival because of how traumatic you perceive that was as a 4-year-old. And so the mental body plays a huge part in these stories and beliefs that we need to look into. And then we get to an even deeper level of body, deeper level of mind, the subconscious mind, known as the causal body. And this is where deep karmic patterns, karmic imprints, and unconscious programming like ancestral trauma and even past life themes come into play. And because these are across past lives, because these records are so deeply imprinted into the energy field, they are usually the most pervasive, pertinent, and persistent out of all of the fears and distortions that we'll experience in this lifetime. It's almost like you could consider they're at the template level of reality, where our reality and our core themes of what we're experiencing in this lifetime are playing out. And so oftentimes this is where those repeating patterns, let's say you're having trouble with finances, you can never make enough money to pay the bills, or even you can make enough money to pay the bills, but never any more. And you can never figure out why. This is where we can experience ideas of troubled relationships. We can never maintain a stable, healthy, consistent relationships, attracting people and archetypes like narcissists all the time, especially for empaths. This is where this can continue, because there could be records held deep within the causal body that transcend lifetimes and even require past life regression to really look into and discover the core and the root nature of what those imprints are. And then we get to the soul body, the I am presence. This is where as I said before, all the mystics, gurus, and sages will talk about rest in the I am, rest in the silence, because this is our true nature. This is what transcends all of these bodies. This is what transcends our entire energy field. This is the fractal of source, you could even call it. This is the perspective of source that comes in to have the experience of being in a finite body, a finite energy field, to experience day-to-day reality and that which we could call a lifetime. And it is possible in this lifetime to embody the I am presence. And I would even suggest that that's potentially where we're all heading when we're on this path. Because if you're more spiritually inclined, which I tend to attract the more spiritually inclined people to my work, if you are that way inclined, you've probably heard about the New Earth and the 5D. This is where we're heading. We're heading to the embodied ascension, which is the ascension of our consciousness back to the I am presence, so that our true frequency can be disseminated throughout this energy field, throughout the field of this physical reality, and we can experience our I am presence in the physical. So by healing and clearing all of these distortions at different layers of depth of body and mind that I've just covered, this is where we're going to be able to create a clear signal of our core vibrational signature to permeate our whole physical experience, which then creates the reflection of that like a mirror. As we know, physical reality is somewhat like a mirror, or directly like a reflection or a mirror of our state of vibrational being and our state of vibrational consciousness. So our energy signature can be in harmony and in union with our core nature, our I am presence. And again, if you are spiritually inclined, you probably have seen something similar to this in the past. You've probably seen something similar to the chakras, the energy systems, and the energy bodies like this that I've just described. And as I was discussing, the soul, you could say the I am presence, is that which transcends all of these concentric circles of energy body of our energy field. And we can consider each of our energy bodies or each of the concentric circles as a field of awareness that houses these records. And as these records are housed within each of the bodies, they then create the projections or the reflections that we experience in day-to-day life. So if we've got a black cloud, let's say up in the causal body, that looks like attracting narcissists because we've got an abandonment or unworthiness wound or rejection wound or something of that nature. If we then work on that and eliminate that and clear it so it becomes a clear, perfect field to carry our soul frequency, to carry our higher body, our higher self, then we can experience the projection and the reflection changing in physical reality because there is nothing in our energy field any longer to create the reflection. And I know that some of these bodies are named a little bit differently here, like the etheric and lower mental, higher mental, etc. I just like to keep it simple because there's different naming conventions that we can use, but I like to keep it simple with the naming convention that I'm using here because it's much more simple and it is very effective. And if you want to know more about the chakras, I'm not going to cover them in this mini course, but just know they are like energy vortices that also carry information and vibrational frequency within them. And if they're blocked and if they're distorted with different distortions and fears, then they can be blocked and the vortex can be slowed, which makes it difficult for our core true expression of our I am presence to shine through in an undistorted way. So now we can start to see why an incomplete view of healing can be so detrimental. And it's not that you've ever been doing things wrong. If you're still healing, which I assume you are, which is why you're here, then you've simply been working with an incomplete map. And my work here for now is to deliver a complete map to you because full healing requires multi-dimensional layering, multi-dimensional healing, because you may have heard that we are multi-dimensional beings, which is completely true. So we would never seek to heal across one dimension or one layer, let's say only the physical body or the nervous system, when we're multi-dimensional beings having a multi-dimensional experience, and there could be the deeper roots housed in deeper dimensions or higher dimensions of the energy field. And this is what the cost is of healing with a broken map. And you may have experienced one or multiple of these right now. So money and purpose. If we're still stuck in the same financial struggles for years and years on end, which many people are, no matter how hard you work, you still seem to keep looping back to the same layers of scarcity. That is because of the broken healing map. Relationships, turbulent repeating patterns, never finding lasting harmony with counterparts, whether romantic or even just platonic, or even family members. If we're constantly coming up against conflict, disharmony, distortion, and even fear from our counterparts, again, this is the cost of a broken healing map. Fear and anxiety. If we're always waking up day to day and we're feeling like our body is instantly waking up into fight or flight, we're feeling anxiety all the time, we're feeling constant nervous system loops, like fears trapped in the nervous system. Once again, this is a huge cost of a broken healing map because we just simply haven't been trained or taught how to reveal the deeper layers or even what the deeper layers are. And also the spiritual block as well. So for a lot of people, there's so much turbulence in their entire energy field and physical body that they simply just can't even get in touch with or understand at a feeling sense what the I am presence even is, or what I'm even talking about when I talk about resting in the silence. And so clearing the energy field really allows us to step in more and more to the I am presence, our soul frequency, our soul awareness, which is the ultimate goal of this work, to create permanent union with the embodiment of our I am awareness. And so without a complete map of all of the layers, we just seem to keep circling and looping month after month, year after year, in the same patterns, in the same fears, the same turbulence, in the same problems in our physical reality, in the same obstacles, without being able to get past it. In the modules to come, I'm going to break down these layers, and my goal is by the end of this mini course, you're going to have a clear idea of why you've been experiencing the same issues over and over again for years and years on end. And it's going to bring you some relief in knowing that we can now create a map, a full, complete map of healing that we can work with to create lasting change, sometimes rapid change as well. And more importantly, get to the embodiment and get to the I am awareness so we can begin to experience the physical reflection of our undistorted core soul frequency. So in module 2, we'll start peeling back the layers. I'll see you there.